then move into superintendent chair and student remarks, which include the SEAM 2023-24 annual report and audit and elementary literacy update. We have the consent agenda, including consideration of acceptance of $13,247 of grants from the WHS Parent Faculty Association. We have consideration of acceptance of a $500 grant from the Boston Foundation, consideration of approval of minutes, August 22nd, September 5th and 6th, 5th and 12th, October 10th and 24th, November 19th, December 5th, all of 2024. We will then have report, update, and action items on vaping technology proposal for the Winchester High School, an overview of new state regulations, competency determination for graduation. Finance subcommittee will bring the FY26 athletic fee discussion and an FY26 budget discussion, budget development update. Policies subcommittee, oh goodness, a box popped up on my screen. We'll have a list of distribution of policies with no change, a first reading of policies with MASC updates or deletion, and a first reading of policy EFE, which is a civil rights complaint policy for nutrition programs. Then we'll have anticipated future agenda items, next meetings, and an executive session. The purpose of which is number 2, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with non-union personnel, and purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, as chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the committee. And then we'll have adjournment. So with that, we will move into public comment. And let me just see. I'm shifting my screens around just to see.
And people should raise their digital hand if they want to speak.
Well, that is what I was just thinking. If anybody is here to make a public comment, then if you could please raise your digital hand, that would be very helpful.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
I'll give it a minute more. I'm not seeing any hands raised either. Okay, then I will close public comment and we will move forward into, let's see, superintendent chair and student remarks. Dr. Hackett?
So good evening, everybody. Good to see you. And I'm glad that we were able to do this meeting via Zoom. We do have a couple of people here tonight to give us a little bit of information on a couple different items on the agenda. So it's always a little easier when we have attendees doing that we can do a Zoom meeting as well. So tonight, really just by way of a quick update, you do have in your previously distributed packet the SEAM, which is the collaborative educational collaborative that we are a part of. As you know, you have the 23-24 annual audit report and the audit actually. I'm just sharing with you that it is in the folder. You do have it. If you have questions that you'd like to get to me, if you need additional information on anything in that report, just please let me know and I will reach back out to the collaborative to get that information for you. Also just briefly, elementary literacy update this week. It's hard to believe it's Thursday. This week, the other collaborative, CES, actually joined the faculty meeting. They joined via Zoom on Tuesday. And they were able to provide everyone who was able to attend, who attended, really targeted to the elementary staff, an update on where we are in the process, and as they really kind of just get everybody on the same page with. So it was essentially the same information that was provided to you at your meeting when they presented. And they're going to follow that up with, they're going to spend, as they did back last year, they're going to visit every school, and the principals are going to set up a schedule for teachers to be able, as teachers and staff to be able to go down and meet with them and talk to them. It may be a team of two of them or one, but they want to provide an opportunity for questions around what was presented. Really, the idea also being trying to get a little bit of feedback on next steps from people as we continue to work through the process. Additionally, the elementary literacy team is meeting again on Tuesday next week. So those are the big updates. And just by way of, we had put this item on the agenda as a standing item several months ago. We were obviously in a different place. The work with the elementary literacy team had not yet started. And I'm wondering whether or not I can certainly happy to continue to provide an update if there is one to provide at every meeting. But my thinking would be, and I would approach the collaborative on this, that it might be better to schedule maybe one additional collaborative presentation in March and then another one near the end of the year, so that and people know that those are coming. And I think so. It's entirely up to you. It's certainly easy for me to read off what's happened, but those are more informative, obviously, than anything I'm going to be able to provide you in a short period of time. So, for your consideration, that's all I have.
Are you asking for some feedback right now on that, or just?
No, just for your consideration. I mean, if people want to just reach out, maybe offline, and we can talk about it or now, it's fine.
Mr. Nixon?
I'll say, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to give feedback to Dr. Hackett offline afterwards. I think, Dr. Hackett, you were saying that was the end of your remarks under superintendent report, right?
Correct. Yep.
So I had an issue that I just wanted to acknowledge. I had an opportunity to have a very brief conversation with the superintendent about this earlier this evening. For those that are not aware, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents just announced this week they are severing ties with MassQ, which is our technology educator collaborative in the state. This follows the resignation of a number of board members at MassQ in the aftermath of some events at their fall conference. This was beginning to hit mainstream media this morning. I just have a request for Dr. Hackett, given that this is sort of hot off the press, if he could, when it's available, if there's any statement from MASS that he could share with the school committee offline, that would be helpful. And then separately, the news was also that MassQ has suspended operations. I visited their website twice today. The website is still up, but there's just a banner that says services are not available. So that seems to be accurate reporting. My questions, I think, are, as we go into budget season, if MassQ should cease to exist, are there other opportunities and resources that our administrators want to think about to support our professional staff in terms of professional development that we should be budgeting for? And I'm certainly also interested in what kind of fees we've been paying to MassQ, whether directly or indirectly. But I just want to share that with folks. And I think Dr. Hackett does have some information just sort of hot off the press he'll be able to share following the meeting.
Thank you. And I thought I heard Mr. Hopcroft?
Yeah, I was just going to say on the prior comment, Dr. Hackett, I'm supportive of having periodic updates, rather than dribbling, a little bit of CESs, meeting with these folks here or there, to have more substantive updates, every month or two or so. I'm fine with that.
And we'll still provide the public updates, which you'll be on anyway, but in terms of it being a standing item on your agenda.
And I think that's great because it also, I've certainly gotten a couple of times when people have asked what the update is, and it ends up not being a great substantive discussion. It's more of just a few sentences to update. So I think if we sort of have a public acknowledgement of when the larger scale updates are going to happen, I think that's great, and publicize those dates. So it's fully in support of that.
I agree with
Miss
Tim and Tom, Dr. Hackett, and I would just add that perhaps if as long as we keep a link on the front page of our website to the literacy page, so that if people land on our website, they know immediately where to go and aren't searching around as well, then that may, and we're publicly letting people know that's where to go look if they want more specific information about it, then that would be helpful for folks too.
I think having the bigger updates, and having a set time for the bigger updates and letting people know, and having that information available on the website is is a good use. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of comments for my remarks. This week, this is just an update on a grant that the school committee had approved recently from WIFI. We had approved in one of our recent meetings the globe, a big globe to cut, and this was an it was a grant request by Miss Betty Beauchamp, to bring a big globe to the elementary schools, to all of the elementary schools, at second and fourth grade, and then to run a program just talking about the globe and learning about the world and the connections between the world. So that happened on Monday of this week, and I was able to go and watch the program for actually both the second and the fourth grade classes. And it was really exciting. The kids were very excited. The globe was huge. It was set up in the gym over at the Vincent Owen School. And the kids could all walk around the globe and then enter the globe and sit inside. And apparently it was hand painted. And then you could see the world, the map of the world on the globe from the inside. So it was all kind of reversed. And the program, as the program coordinators just talked about the different areas and of the world, and kids got to talk about their experiences. It was very hands-on, and the kids were really excited and had a lot of questions. So I just wanted to say thank you again to WIFI for bringing that to us, and thank you to Ms. Beauchamp for putting the application in. It was really cool. The other thing was I saw that the Winchester High School computer science students had also been doing, they had been coming to the elementary schools to teach an hour of code. And the hour of code was just some coding work with elementary school students. So I think it's exciting to see in our community when we can bring together when our high school students are mingling with the elementary school students and get a chance to talk to them, and show the elementary school students what they can be like someday. So I thought that was really exciting. And the third thing, which is a little more mundane, is Miss Erin Allen had pulled together a list of the parent association meetings that are coming up this winter and spring. So I will have her forward that to all of you. So if you could just take a look and make sure that we're all covering our parent association assignments. And if you have a question about which parent association meetings that you're supposed to be going to, then just feel free to reach out. And that's all for me. And we have our student council representative, Miss Michaela Jens, here. So welcome.
Oh,
Looking
thank
forward to
you.
a report from the
Oh,
schools.
thank you. No, I'm excited to give it. Everything's going really, really well at the high school. Yesterday, student council had Davis Clark speak to the high school during one block. Yeah, he got everyone fired up.
Lock
and
in.
Yeah, that catchphrase. He got everyone locked in for the new year. It was really exciting. There was like 50 kids. It was really good. Good
Oh my God, I
turnout.
bet.
And he spoke so well. I know I was definitely moved by his speech, and he was so relatable to us too. He talked about his high school experiences, which was wonderful, and like how he did at UMass and his job, and it's just, yeah, it was amazing. And I know a lot of people were very moved by it, so we're super excited about that. And otherwise, I think people are just getting ready for midterms and like semester ending. The high school's also, the chamber singers are performing with the middle school next week. So I'm excited for like that blend. I feel like that'd be really fun. Also talking with my peers, I think students are very excited about the gym plan. There's a lot of chatter about that, and we're all really looking forward to the new gym. And thank you so much for your work on that. We're really excited.
That is exciting. I love the new gym. I love Davis Clerk. That is pretty cool. I was out in New York, and even my nieces didn't really know of him, but then they wrote to their male friends in college, and the male friends were like, "Oh my God, Davis Clerk, he's at Winchester High School." So,
I know he's an icon everywhere. I feel like people know him like
uh,
even across like states. It's so cool.
that is funny. So thank you. Really
Yeah, no,
appreciate that. Any other comments, questions from the committee members for Michaela? Mr. Nixon?
I just have a follow-up to Dr. Hackett or Mr. Marin. Where do we stand on evaluating Michaela's suggestion that we let kids swipe in at the back door?
Good evening. So we're having we have ongoing discussions with Mr. Mahoney and kind of security and protocols at WHS. So I know there's some concerns with that we're still talking through. And so I don't have any updates today on that.
Well, not to make Michaela repeat herself, I won't have her do it, but I think the case that our student reps made was a good one. We have a lot of we have a lot of activities in that building after school hours. We have some community activities in that building, of course, after school hours. But a number of our kids have a reason to be in the building, and that entrance really serves certainly 2, if not 3.5 precincts in Winchester. Popular drop-off pickup point during normal school hours. So it'd be great if we can find a way to acknowledge some of those requests. I think they're reasonable. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Really appreciate your update. So, okay, then with that, we will move on to the consent agenda with, well, I believe I read that off at the beginning. So, grant, and minutes. Does
Motion to
anybody have any comments or questions?
I do, Madam Chair. I had a comment on the, well, what I'd like to do is pull the minutes from September 5th. The others I'm okay with for the consent agenda, and then we'll double back on that one.
Okay. Otherwise, then I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda with pulling the minutes of September 5th, 2024.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second. Whomever.
Oh,
We'll
also
We'll let Ms.
confusing.
Allen sort that one out.
Good luck, Miss Allen. That's right. All in favor? I'll just go by my camera. Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Dr. Matthews,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
Miss Bergstrom,
Aye.
and I vote aye. So the vote is unanimous. And Mr. Nixon, would you like to come back to the September 5th minutes?
Madam Chair, before we move
Yes.
on, I just want to thank Ms. Allen for her work on these. We had
And
some.
you too, Dr. Matthews.
I am, you know, on the committee, so I'm glad to do that. But I think we've had some extensive meetings, both over the summer as well as through the fall. And it was a lot of work to pull these together. So since I know that she will be listening to this recording, I just want to specifically flag and say thank you so much for all you do to support us. The minutes the past 6 months have been rather challenging. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let the minutes of this meeting reflect our appreciation for
You're
Ms.
here.
Allen.
Exactly.
So much. So
moved.
okay, Mr. Nixon, September 5th.
Sure. So, and I'd sent this requested edit to Ms. Allen and also to our recording secretary. So page 3 in our discussion on the Mystic School, You'll recall a lot of conversation around scope, the original piping, 1923, the later piping and the addition, and our interest in those chronically cold spaces on the second floor at the top of the hill. So page 3, there's a sentence that says, it's Mr. Nixon stated UMass Donahue Institute and an architectural planner will support a facilities master plan targeted for the spring of 25. Second sentence, he inquired about removing the 1950 piping to decrease the project scope. I'm suggesting that that sentence be revised to read, he inquired about removing the 1950 piping in the Main Street addition from the project scope to make more budget available to address the chronically cold spaces on the upper level at the rear of Mystic. Ms. Bergstrom made similar suggestions. Those are actually reflected in the meeting minutes from earlier conversation. I just wanted to clarify that. I wasn't trying to pull out piping. I was trying to pull it out of the scope. That's all. And so if that's agreeable to everybody, I would make a motion, we approve the September 5th minutes with that amendment.
So moved.
Thank you.
All in favor? Ms. Bergstrom?
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft?
Aye.
Dr. Matthews?
Aye.
Mr. Nixon?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the vote is unanimous. So thank you very much. Let us see. Okay, now we're moving on to the report, update, and action items. So first up is the vaping technology proposal for the Winchester High School. And I believe we have Ms. Paradise and Mr. Mahoney here. And then in the audience, I believe we have Dot Butler.
We do.
Maybe the powers that be can elevate Ms. Butler.
Sure. Prepare to be elevated, Ms. Butler. Only hurts for a minute.
I'm trying to scroll down to that part of the binder.
So if the chair is okay with it, I've asked Anna really, who kind of took the point on this with Ms. Butler back in the spring. This is new to you, but this has been in discussion for quite some time. So Anna, if you are okay with just kind of walking the committee through it, you do have in your packet previously distributed a kind of a summary on what it is. And but I think it would be good for Anna to go through what it is, and then if you have questions for her, and also obviously for Ms. Butler and Mr. Mahoney.
That's right. Thank you for that. I was searching for the page in my binder. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me here tonight and for considering this concept. But Dot Butler and I have known each other since I was a small child. But when I came back,
Anna, we're getting an echo.
You can have a little.
If you have
echo.
another device on, or
we don't. But let me turn my speaker down. Is that better?
still echoing.
No, there's 2 microphones in there somewhere.
I really only have my computer on. I don't have anything else.
Okay,
it makes like extra surround sound.
We'll hear it twice at the same time.
Okay.
So
sometimes
these are 2 sets of
Miss
ears.
Paradise. I mean, she may be speaking from.
I can also jump in for Miss Paradise at any time. I know what she's going to say. So if you need me to jump in, Anna, just let me know.
My suggestion would be for those of us that have our microphones on right now, maybe we just put ourselves on mute and see if that does it, and then we can come off if we have a comment, because that might also be it.
Okay, how is it now? Still echoey? I have no idea why my computer's doing that.
that's okay. Just roll with it.
Okay. So Ms. Butler and I started talking at the beginning of 3 school years ago, actually, about this concept. And so Dot's role as the head of the Coalition for a Safer Community blends with my role as the Dean of Students a lot, because obviously building community, incorporating our community, and having our students feel safe and therefore able to learn and thrive is a huge goal of everyone at Winchester High School, but specifically the administrative team. And we had been noticing an uptick in the potential of vaping at Winchester High School, in that we would smell puffs of fruity smell as we walked past bathrooms or into bathrooms, or we would see 4 or 5 kids in a stall in a bathroom when we would enter a bathroom, or we would notice groups of kids sort of meeting up in the hallway and then going into bathrooms together and things like that. So Winchester High School is a very secure and safe school for the most part, but obviously for privacy reasons, bathrooms have very limited monitoring technology. And as I'm going to use the word vape over and over again, it's going to refer to any electric nicotine delivery system or any THC or tobacco, like we're talking about the entire spectrum. So having been a student at Winchester High School, when I was there, students smoked out back. It was called The Rock, and it was right at the edge of the property, and that's where students smoked. And then you had to leave the building. You couldn't smoke in the building without getting caught. It was too lingering. It was too obvious that it was happening. And then while I was an educator, vapes hadn't sort of hit the ground, and then they just sort of took us, the whole educational community, not Winchester High School specifically, by storm as they sort of became more popular, and people were touting them as like better than smoking cigarettes, which they've actually turned out not to be better than smoking cigarettes and all those types of things. So the problem with vapes at Winchester High School is that the vape technology is so good that the smell dissipates fairly quickly. And so by the time, if there was someone vaping in a bathroom and someone reported it, by the time we could get to the bathroom, the student, like if everyone was in the bathroom, we wouldn't necessarily know exactly when it happened. So let's use Michaela as an example. If Michaela had left the restroom and she had come down to see me or talk to me later, and she said, I went to the bathroom sometime second block, there's a bunch of people vaping in there, I felt uncomfortable. It's very hard to then go back and be like, well, who entered a bathroom between this window, meaning 11 and 12 in the afternoon? There's dozens and dozens of children. And the procedure to figure out who was vaping, obviously it's against school policy, it's against the law in Massachusetts at this age. And Winchester has signed on to the nicotine-free pledge. So everyone born after, is it 2004 dot, anyone born after 2004 won't be able to buy any vaping technology ever in Winchester, not even when they're legal to buy it. But so we were facing this issue of, we understand it's happening. Parents were coming to the coalition in different forms and reporting that their kids were reporting it to them, and that they were feeling concerned in two different ways. One, kids were getting addicted to these vape products because nicotine is a highly addictive substance, and our kids don't seem to fully understand that. So I want to be really clear. There needs to be a nicotine tobacco educational policy, like parts, not policy, Mr. Mahoney. There needs to be a component to this entire thing. So we want to educate our students about the dangers of addictive substances and nicotine delivery devices. We also want to add a component of a cessation program to help students once they realize they have been addicted. But a key component is deterring them from vaping in the high school to begin with, so that students feel safe. We were seeing students report to us at times that they felt uncomfortable using the restrooms because there were groups of kids vaping in the restrooms. And that shouldn't be the experience of any child in a public school. And these vape detectors, and we have worked very closely with our neighboring districts, with our job alike assistant principals and deans and principals to do research in terms of which schools have them, which vape detectors are they using, and what is the success rate. While I'm not saying that a vape detector stops students from vaping, it removes 14 spaces in our building where students can vape undetected. And if you think about our high school building, most of the public spaces are under camera. And so students aren't vaping in those spaces because they're on camera. Within classrooms, we see they're adult supervised. Students aren't vaping in those spaces, ideally, because there's adult supervision. But our bathrooms are unsupervised, obviously for privacy reasons, but also, the way other school systems have sort of got around this is in their collective bargaining, they've had duties where teachers sit in bathrooms for entire periods, and they just monitor the bathrooms. We're not a school system that does that. We don't have the staff available to do that either. So of our like communities around us and of the communities that we have touched base with, the Zeptive vape detectors, which is the ones we originally proposed, is the most common brand that the other school districts are using, and they have seen great success with eliminating vaping in their bathrooms with those. I'm not saying it's curing the entire situation, and I'm not saying it's taking vapes out of the children's hands, but giving them less opportunities, and making sure our bathrooms are safe for all students and making sure they feel comfortable for all students would be a great addition. Another reason we went with the Zeptive models that we proposed is because they are a standalone product, meaning there's no product on the market can actually be compared to them because they are wireless. Every other vape product on the market requires a big installation of running wires, through either parallel or series connections, but we're going to have to wire the entire building. And Mr. Mahoney, I think we're 36,000 square feet. Is that right?
No, that over 300,000 square feet.
300,000. So, order of 10 magnitude, no big deal. But that would be a very large cost on top of the cost of the units, whereas the Zeptive units are wireless, and so they simply mount, and they are reusable battery charged and all of that type of stuff. So we would be able to, our custodial crew would be able to install them over a vacation or the summer months with very little effort on their own. It could be done in a matter of hours, not days and days and days for thousands and thousands of dollars. And so we proposed originally to the coalition worked with us, Ms. Butler, and we proposed to the Board of Health to use opioid money. It wasn't approved for opioid money, and so I believe it's gone to ARPA money. We have also found an additional source of funding potentially, which would be the Juul settlement, because the Juul settlement for Massachusetts. The Juul settlement, which was about $500 million, Massachusetts got 41 million of it, and they specifically named vape detectors as a use for school districts for the money. So it is part of that settlement as well. Sorry if I talk back or I echoed a ton, but does anyone have questions for me? Or Mr. Mahoney or Dot? Tom?
Yeah.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Thank you. I was just curious, do the detectors have an audible alarm that goes off in the bathroom, or do they send a signal to the office? Or
That's a great question. So these detectors actually they would send the alarms to the administrators' computers and to our phones if we install the app on our phones, so we could get them anywhere we are in the building, and it timestamps them and it tells us which location, which also gives us the ability to go back and timestamp the cameras to see exactly at that moment who had entered the bathroom and who was out. So it gives us a real data point that we can use to sort of get to the bottom of what's happening. They don't sound an audible alarm in the bathroom. One fact that I forgot to mention that is actually what I think is a good benefit of these as well is that they have a loud noise alarm in them. So if a fight or a disturbance or a disagreement happened in a bathroom, they would also alert us. And so if a student felt unsafe, or if they were injured and they yelled, that would come to us too. And there's no way at the moment right now for someone in a bathroom who's in a tough state or feels unsafe to notify anyone without leaving the bathroom. And now this would be a way that we could also make sure students are safe and thriving in our environment.
That's great. And I appreciate that, hearing about that extra safety detection that's there. It sounds like you said with the being able to timestamp and look at the cameras I assume we have cameras outside of all of our bathrums.
Yeah, I mean, they're not pointed on the bathroom itself, but we have cameras in the hallways outside of our bathroom. Yeah.
And if this, I'm generally supportive of this, and if it removes those 14 spaces, that's great. Have you thought about, or have other districts found that that once the bathrooms are not a viable place to vape, that people move to stairwells or other places, or do we need another round after this, I guess?
So I mean, teenagers are sort of like water. They're going to find their path. So,
They're creative.
but we
Smart
have
kids.
very few spaces in Winchester High School that aren't either in classroom spaces, personal offices. Even our stairwells have cameras in different angles at different points and things like that. So there's really very few spaces at Winchester High School that kids could go easily, like say during class time. So most of this is occurring like kids leave class to go to the bathroom and things like this happen. They would have to be out of class an exceptional amount of time for them to find one of these alternate spaces, like down the gym hallway past the custodian's office, like things like that. And they would be out of class and teachers would start flagging that as well.
And one last question. You said it's silent, but it notifies administrators. Does it notify you, in the central office, or I missed whether it was, will people closer to the bathroom maybe be notified too, or?
We actually have an administrator next on each floor at this point, within 100 yards of each bathroom. So we are fairly mobile and fairly able to get there. It would notify anyone we chose to put the software on their computer or their phone.
It would be 100
So-
feet. It's more like 20 feet, but Miss Paradise hasn't been in the math classroom for a while.
Mr. Mahoney, I'm talking about the boys and the girls' bathrooms,
I
so
know,
that I'm not
I know.
gendering the
100
problem.
yards is a big step.
It's 300
Okay,
feet
well-
from John's office to the girls' restroom, but okay.
I appreciate all the work you guys have done on measuring distances and but particularly on this proposal. Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to say, and I want the community to hear, is that this is not because we want to be punitive in any way, shape, or form. No part of our job is catching kids doing something wrong. We are always just trying to guide them in the correct directions and create safe spaces for them to grow and learn. Like, we would prefer if no student ever broke any rules ever, that would mean we could just focus on positive educational growth. But sometimes making missteps and then learning about them is part of educational growth as well. And this is more about creating a safe community and really training them and teaching them the dangers of these devices. Mr. Nixon?
Good evening. Hi. I have an overarching comment and then several sort of comments and questions. I appreciate the motivation behind this 100%. I'm not against this in principle. I'll say that again, not against it in principle. My first question when I read about this proposal, though, I was trying to understand the efficacy of the technology. So you've got the company is Zeptive, so they make a product, they represent what it does. What I want to look for any technology we're putting in our buildings is where's the independent lab testing to prove that it's actually effective. I'm not able to find that. Maybe that testing exists, but I did some digging on their website and I couldn't find it. I appreciate there is a company that has made a product and they are making claims about what their product does. It's important to me that there is some independent testing that validates their claims about how this technology works. That would make me feel better. But in digging into it, what I did find is they have certain, recommend for a product like this to work, it has to be within a certain volume of space, sort of architecturally. And what they recommend is these be installed on a ceiling no greater than 8 feet in height and in a space that's no more than 140 square feet. So our multi-stall bathrooms are more than 140 square feet, and they have ceilings greater than 8 feet. In fact, they say their product is not expected to work at ceilings of 9 feet. If you have a larger space than 140, that's not really an issue. It just means you may need more devices to sort of handle the larger air volume. And I think as a part of the proposal that was coming to us tonight, there is grant money here, there's dollars. And so the dollars are going to buy a certain number of devices. If there was some expectation that we would buy, let's say, one detector for a multi-stall bathroom, the numbers would suggest that that would not work just because of the size of those bathrooms. So there's some maybe design and measurement and sort of engineering behind this that I'd like to understand we're looking at really carefully, especially for those multi-stall bathrooms where I think our ceilings they're at 8'6" and possibly 9. I know our single room bathrooms, those ceilings they're actually above 8 feet. Our door frames are right at about 7 feet and we have almost 20 inches above those. So I just want to be sure that we don't go chase a solution that just doesn't work, in the architectural space. And then just to circle back to my comment about the efficacy of these, I can't remember which district it was. You may remember, Ms. Paradise. It's either Malden or Melrose. There was a statement from a principal on the company's website that says after they installed these, they had 2 confirmed cases of vaping. That does not mean that they don't work, because that actually may speak to the deterrent factor that you and Mr. Mahoney, right, were just speaking to. So the deterrent piece, I think, is very real, and I appreciate it. But I think I'd like to just understand a little more about the independent testing of these. How do we know these really work? And to get maybe a little more detail on the spaces that we would propose to put these in, and be sure that they would perform like we would expect them to.
I appreciate your comments.
Not against it, but I just feel like I would need some more information. And then to you, Madam Chair, my only last comment would be, and perhaps she goes last, if Michaela has thoughts on this tonight, I'd love to hear from her, but I'm not going to twist her arm. But thank you.
Miss Paradise, do you want to mention the actual schools that we spoke to that use them?
So in our communities, we've spoken to Melrose, Burlington, Billerica, those types of schools. They use them all in their multi-stall bathrooms, and they have a single Zeptiv in each of them, and they still receive alerts regularly and go in, or they did at the beginning, and then they've seen a great reduction in the alerts that they have seen, and not due to tampering or whatnot. Like they have student reports that say that genuinely less vaping occurring in the bathrooms. So while I know that's not a scientific research study, of every assistant principal that we spoke to that has vape detectors in their bathrooms said that students report that there is less vaping occurring in the bathrooms. So wasn't a double-blind t-test, but the boots on the ground are saying it's working, and so I tend to believe my colleagues in their firsthand experience.
That's
I think the
helpful.
vocational school too over in Wakefield has them as well.
I was just going to say that I have been at the Coalition for a Safer Community meeting this morning. And there was a very interesting speaker who was just talking about the use of cannabis, and that there are some very high concentration, or there are many very high concentration products out there that would that in the area of like 60 to 90% concentration
THC.
of THC, which please don't ask me what that stands for. But I just think that as Ms. Paradise was talking about, education is important. And if the vape detectors can help us identify, help make students aware, and then also help them to keep them a little safer, I think that is really important. So I'm also generally in support. Mr. Hopcroft, you have your hand raised again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no, I was reflecting on Mr. Nixon's remarks, and I really appreciate his knowledge of the building. I don't know who else would be able to bring that to bear, and also his diligence to drill down on the company's webpage as well, and his acknowledgement of the deterrent benefit of this, and just wanted to sort of reflect that we're talking about a $14,000 grant from from the outside, and something that's not hardwired in. It seems that it's a fairly low risk thing from my point of view. If it were an expensive enterprise product that was wired in and things, I'd say, yeah, we should probably get a lot more from my point of view. But I feel that if we have anecdotal evidence from some other districts that it seems to be working, whether it's the deterrent effect or just the alarms going off or whatever it is, that they find it helpful, it's pretty inexpensive, and it sounds like it's not very invasive if it's just screwed onto a wall in the bathroom. And my view would be, like, give it a try. Let's see how it works. My gut says that it'll be more helpful than not. But I do appreciate the concerns, because it might, in my head I was thinking, like, you put it on a wall where you could then add a second one if you needed a second one in the room, or maybe since they're just screwed on, you just move them. But maybe just try a pilot and see, fail fast, and or get it up and running. So that's my 2 cents.
Ms. Bergstrom?
I just want to thank Ms. Paradise and Ms. Butler and Ms. Jens actually for being involved in this discussion for quite a while. And I just want to say that I put my faith in you guys because I know that you wouldn't be bringing it to us if you hadn't thought a lot of these things through and had some pretty thorough discussions from people who are already using them. So I'm hoping that you are going to learn from their experience. We're certainly not, it doesn't sound like early adopters in this. And it sounds to me, in terms of safety and security, like a high-tech version of a smoke alarm. And we wouldn't think twice about putting smoke alarms in any of our spaces. So I don't think any device that is easy to install, we have the money for, and is not invasive in terms of student privacy, but does promote student security, I think 100% that I would support this. So thank you.
I'm going to go to Mr. Principal Mahoney and then
Thank you.
Dr. Matthews, and then come back to you, Mr. Nixon.
I actually wanted to agree with Ms. Bergstrom and Mr. Hopcroft. It seems to me in Ms. Paradise and Ms. Butler that it's a low effort, high reward opportunity. But I also do agree with Mr. Nixon. It's worth on our end to work with the company to install in the best possible, most effective way to get the most effective results, which Winchester High School will never be a police state. It's never Rarely does a kid say, this place is like a prison, but that's said in a lot of other high schools. It's rarely said, if at all, at our high school. And that's not what we want to do. We want to create opportunities for good choices, take away opportunities for bad choices. And this is grant money. So it seems like, we could spend that grant money, but we want to do it as effectively as possible. So working with the company and looking at the specs where they should be put to maximize effectiveness and efficiency, speaking to Mr. Nixon's point, I think is worth our time on the back end as well.
Dr. Matthews?
I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who've presented this tonight and for the legwork that's gone in behind the scenes. I know Ms. Butler and our two colleagues at the high school have been working together on this. I happen to, as those of you who are on the committee at least know, I happen to be somewhat connected to the Board of Health in my own house, being married to the chair. But I hear often, as someone who does not have a public health background, I hear often about the challenges that our kids are facing all the way up through their teenage years. And he's a pulmonologist, a pediatric pulmonologist, right? And these challenges that are being faced are much more complex than they were in the past. And I think that, especially given what Ms. Bergstrom said and Mr. Hopcroft and others about the fact that this is actually an opportunity that comes without a financial investment required on our part. I think that gives us some more freedom to experiment and see, as Mr. Mahoney said, what the best implementation can be and how it works for us. So kudos to those who did the work, for your advocacy, for your care towards the students of Winchester. And as you probably have guessed, I'm in support of this as well.
Mr. Nixon?
Thank you. So just to piggyback on what Mr. Mahoney said, he somewhat was taking the words out of my mouth. The manufacturer in this case, they're local, as I understand it. They have a 617 area code. I think it would be appropriate and prudent to simply engage with them, have them, whether it's look at the drawings or just come out and look at Winchester High School, make some recommendations. It's great that other districts have found these to be successful, but are their bathrooms configured like ours are? At the end of the day, it's just physics. These devices have to operate in a certain volume of space to be effective. And if we should need, let's say, twice the number of devices to really get the effectiveness that Ms. Paradise and Mr. Mahoney are talking about, I think we'd want to know that. And then we'd need to figure out how to pay for it, whether there might be additional grant money, or do we need to go to Dr. Hackett and look a little bit in our budget and make it a public-private partnership. Who knows? So I just want to be sure we go about this smartly and not, to Mr. Hopcroft's point, it's not a huge amount of money, but I'd hate to spend the money and have something that's not working as effectively as it otherwise would.
Thank you. And Dr. Hackett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions. I have one for, I guess I've been making the assumption that that Anna and Dennis aren't going to be slapping these things up in bathrooms, that there would be actually whomever we buy these from would be installing them and testing them to make sure they work. Is that not an accurate assumption, or do we need to get some volunteers?
In general, they reason the executive sort of has the leading edge in this market right now, especially locally, is that it's so easily installable that anyone can install it. But they absolutely, to Chris's point, will come out and look at your space and say, no, we recommend 2 for this space, not 1, or we, like those types of things. But they really are, as it's not hardwired in any way, shape, or form. So it really is like an old school smoke detector where it's a couple screws into the ceiling. Like,
Yep.
And
No,
I
Dennis
believe
could
they're
do
a
it. Is that what
Woburn
you're saying?
company, so they are pretty local.
Yeah. We get Dennis a ladder and a screwdriver. He's all set. Is that what you're saying, Ms. Paradise?
Just getting ready for my next job, Dr. Hackett.
And I have a question for Ms. Butler. So the grant money is actually controlled by the town. It's a grant to the town, correct? And the town would be administering or giving us. We're kind of a recipient of the grant through the town, as opposed to us being a direct recipient of a grant from Winchester Hospital. I don't know if that's clear, but
That's a great question. And we have a wonderful comptroller that I would have to go back to.
I'm familiar with
talk
her.
to, because as Andrew would speak to it as well, that's a whole other world that I
Yep.
don't function in. But
Okay.
I was encouraged by the select board to go for the Winchester Hospital
Okay.
grant. That's where they
All
told
right.
me they felt the money should come from.
Thank you.
That fund
Ms.
is
Jens?
generally controlled by the select board.
I'm sorry?
That fund is generally controlled by the select board, the Winchester Hospital
Yeah,
Gift Fund.
and I'm
Gift
only
account.
making the distinction because we're really not receiving a grant. We are receiving money from the
gift. I think it's
town.
more of a
So
Right.
So in terms of what the committee needs to do in terms of accepting the funds, I think may be different than what it would be if we had applied for a grant ourselves.
Okay. Andrew may be able to speak to that. I don't know.
I'm going to take your advice, Ms. Bartlett, and just have Stacy talk to us.
Yep. So I've reached out proactively to Stacy, but typically we work with the town and I'll contract and sort of encumber directly from those accounts, and where they've already accepted the money and have it on the town side.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Jens, providing us a student perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just put my 2 cents in. I think it's a really good idea to deter it as much as possible, because it's really harming the kids' health and education. My friends and I definitely notice it when we use the bathrooms, and it is a problem. And I think this is a great step towards helping students make the right choices.
Thank you. Mr. Hopcroft.
Yeah, I was just curious, given Mr. Nixon's input about having a vendor, I think that makes great sense to have them come out, make sure we put them in the right place, make sure they're effective, because even a low cost waste of money is not a smart thing. Wondering, I see it that we're requesting the 14,480 from the select board's Winchester Hospital gift fund. Does that fund, I'm assuming, have more money than that? Could you, if you needed to be requesting $29,000, could it be doubled, or so I guess that was one question. The other question I had is just procedurally, what you're looking for from the committee.
I was just about to, I'm just clarifying. So
Dot, I think that'd be a question. I don't know what the total amount of ARPA money is at this point.
The total of the invoice was 16,000. And there is a requirement of maintaining this. Once we install them, it is assumed that it would probably be in the school budget for maintenance and repair, that kind. We would not be going back to the hospital gift fund to ask for the funds to maintain that. I think the purchase and installation probably would be a one and done, but they would expect the school committee. There's a line there,
yeah.
Anna, that talks about, it's a couple of $1,000, right, of the maintenance and so forth.
I guess I was just wondering if the upfront, if it turned out that after the vendor looked at the bathrooms, we needed two in every bathroom, and so now we need $29,000 to pay for it. Is that likely available from the select board, from the Winchester Hospital, like if funds through the select board, or
If I could just make a suggestion, could we maybe, given all the questions we have tonight, we get the company in, they can come in, they can do an assessment to
Right.
tell us what they think we need. And, the other alternative is not every bathroom has a vape detector in it, right? I mean, so it could be either way. So once we have that information, I don't want to, respectfully, I don't want to solve problems that we don't have yet,
Right.
because we have enough problems to deal with as it is. And we can
Yeah.
get you more information.
That's
And I
good.
guess I was gonna say procedurally, like if you just need a thumbs up from us or something, I'm comfortable saying, Dennis can, whoever it is that has to talk to the select board about how much money it is. If it's not coming back to us for money, I think the concept is great. And I feel like these are details that may not need to, I'm happy to hear them again, but.
I would
I'm happy to
disagree. I think what the answer, we need to get an answer to the question of the ongoing cost, because that is that would, whether you need to accept the funding, I don't think you do from the town. I don't think you necessarily we need approval to do these. But if there's an ongoing licensing fee, that does have an ongoing budget implication, and you would need to, we would want you then to give us approval based on that ongoing cost.
And just to
Very well.
clarify that cost of the licensing, because I was a little confused, is that $2,100 per year, or
It's a 3-year. It's a
It is a
3-year lease of
3-year.
the software. Yeah, so we built it in the quote for 3 years so that we could really proof of concept before we went back to you guys to ask for a recurring cost, which would be the software license is what you're buying, which is what we install on our computers and our phones that give us the actual signals and stuff like that.
Okay. Ms. Bergstrom?
I was just going to ask if you needed a motion to support Ms. Paradise and Ms. Butler and Mr. Mahoney to move forward in working with the select board and the Coalition for a Safer Community to install vape detectors at the high school.
I think just given the level of questions we had tonight, I feel a little bit more comfortable if we got the answers to those, and we can come back. Not everyone has to come back, but we may not need you to take any action.
Okay, so
I think
we can have consensus around what I just said.
Yes, I think knowing that you are generally supportive would put us in a better position instead of, us doing all the work, of them doing all the work, and then finding out you really never were supportive and didn't speak your minds, which, that's rare.
So if we are fine with, if Ms. Butler and Ms. Paradise are fine with consensus, and if the committee is in consensus that they may proceed with working with the select board and the town on the installation of the vape detectors in the high school bathrooms, then I would accept that.
I am happy to say that I am in consensus with what Ms. Bergstrom said.
Yeah, I'm supportive of, particularly where the money's for the upfront cost isn't coming from us, and we're talking a couple $1,000s every 3 years. I'm fully supportive of this, but if more details come out, would love to hear that, but go for it. I think it's a great idea. Thank you, Doc.
I am supportive of this as well. Okay, I think that gives you
Great.
what you need.
Yeah,
I believe.
we're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Some of you might be staying. Ms. Butler, I think you might be able to go.
Okay, thank
if
you.
you would like.
Good night.
Thank
Okay,
you, Dot.
have a great evening. It's a long day
Thank
for
you so much.
Hi, Todd.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay, not required. So just to be clear.
Let's see. Okay, next up is an overview of the new state regulations on the competency determination for graduation. And I will.
I'll turn that over to Dr. Alanema.
Okay, I was searching for Principal Mahoney. So okay, all right, Dr. Alanema.
So the goal tonight is just to really give you information about what we know, and probably many of you already know. We're not really going beyond just kind of what was the action, what's the result of the referendum vote in the fall on MCAS and what are the potential implications and just to make sure that everybody kind of on the same page with the starting point with that. So Dr. Allen, Emma, thank you.
And just for our public, this was around, the referendum is around the question 2, removal of MCAS of the 10th grade MCAS as a requirement for graduation. And what will replace it?
To be determined.
But just to clarify, that was to remove it as a state mandate.
Correct.
Right.
So that's a great point. Thank you for that segue, Mr. Nixon,
Yes.
because that's the first thing we should start with is that there are, although it is very murky at the moment, but there are clearly 2 distinct things, and this is a kind of the myth busting. A lot of people think we can now just meet graduation requirements in districts and then we're all set. Where actually the language in the law is the competency determination is designated as something separate. So there is still a lot to be discussed. There is certainly some gray about going forward, the determination of competency determination, more guidelines or more parameters, or even some must-dos could be set by DESE and the Board of Education or the legislature. So there's lots of gray areas. It appears that those different groups all are trying to navigate that and figure out, where the responsibility lies and who has what impetus to do what about it. But in the meantime, what is very clear that we need to do is set as a district, particularly for our 2025 graduates, and perhaps, depending on how long all of this work takes to work it out, is perhaps our 2026 graduates as well. We need to set as a district what we believe should be our competency determination, which needs to be voted on and approved by you in the end. And that needs to be a set policy that we have, in addition to our graduation requirements, which is similar to the system that we've had all along, in that we have our local graduation requirements that are set when you approve, the handbooks with the graduation requirements in them. And then the state used as their competency determination for everyone was the MCAS test. So although they have told us to, hurry up and do this now, they didn't come out with that guideline until right before our winter break, because everyone's trying to sort through kind of where the legalities of this sit going forward. So we tried to give you there's tons of information out there. I'm more than happy if anyone has questions afterwards or wants me to bring forward more things. We've tried to pull out the most important parts for right now. We would propose that we do this process, that we work internally to make some recommendations about what we think might make sense for a competency determination, that we bring that to the policy subcommittee, and then you do your normal process of feedback on that, and a first reading and a second reading before we do a vote in terms of what a local determination will be. I will say, just to say this again, it's possible we do this work and it's very short-term work that then has to be revised, redone, or it is mandated to us for the state going forward. But that's where we sit right now, is that we need to make those plans. And then we pulled out they did have some FAQs that they've recently put together. So we pulled out some of the ones that we thought were most pertinent to this part of the process and to our district. To be clear, which I'm sure many of you already know this, we have very few students that have not already met what is the competency determination. So if before January 6th, so in our MCAS testing for our students that have already tested or retested, if they already had met the competency determination of the MCAS, they can proceed to just graduate, and that is their competency determination. So our current seniors, that's the case for. For the very, very few students that have not passed it yet, that are currently seniors, they no longer have the option of taking a retake and using that as their competency determination, which is why we need to, as in every individual district, has to set their competency determination so that those students know what the expectations are and can meet them in order to graduate. So I'm going to pause all my talking and see if there are questions.
Ms. Bergstrom?
Jen, of the students that you believe have not met that competency determination that are seniors, do we know how many of them might have been pursuing an MCAS alt?
That is a good question. That I will say there are only 2 students, and at least one of them, that wasn't the situation.
Okay.
So I don't know about the other one.
So I was going to ask if we as a district could accept the MCAS alt for those students, since that previously wasn't acceptable.
Yeah, you can no longer just rely on the MCAS as your competency determination.
Okay.
It needs to stay within the spirit of the language, which I have posted here, and that, but it's more around their competencies and their coursework than it is about a test now.
Yeah.
Ironically.
If we could use the MCAS I thought you had
Right.
said we could use that for the seniors. So I was wondering if we could use the MCAS alt for our seniors too.
If for anyone who is currently a senior who did an alt portfolio and it was already accepted, yes. But
Okay,
if they
that's what I was wondering.
accepted, yeah, sorry, I was not clear.
No, I might have not been either. So thank you. We got there.
Mr. Nixon?
Thank you. I'm actually to frame my question, I'm just going to briefly share the written summary of a point that Dr. Elenema just made, and I've highlighted it here. Hopefully you can see that. When the new law takes effect, competency determination will be based on satisfactorily completing casework that's been certified by the student's district. So that's in bold. So that says to me, our district, the Winchester Public Schools, has that obligation for certification.
Correct.
But then I've highlighted guidance on certification will be forthcoming. And Dr. Elenema, I got a little bit of PTSD when I read this because the word guidance reminds me of guidelines. And I think Ms. Bergstrom and others know what I'm talking about. Guidelines are not requirements. So to the extent you know, and I don't want to paint you into a corner. So let's say DESE comes out with some guidance. I'll put that in quotes. I guess my question is, so what? So do we have to wait to see what they say because maybe it's not guidance? Well, could DESE actually come out with requirements that we have to adhere to and use in our certification process? Or could it literally just be a guideline that is, I mean, helpful if we want it to be, but we don't have to rely on it? I'm just curious how thick is the fog on this, if I can be that blunt.
Yeah, it's pretty thick. I was actually on a Zoom this afternoon with someone from DESE who was, forthcoming enough just to share. They're trying to figure out where the legality lies between the board, DESE, and legislature. So it could be mandates and it could be guidelines. It won't be anything for this year. They've been pretty clear about that it won't be that quick. So we do need to make, and the certification piece is the vote by the school committee. We do need to certify a plan for 2025 graduates. And the forthcoming is when they figure out where this decision lies between all of them, what process they're going to use to get feedback from any of us, how much will be mandates and how much will be recommendations. We don't know yet. They don't know yet.
The reason I asked the question I did and the way I framed it the way I did is I feel like to the extent we, and I'm meaning our administrators, have real conviction about recommendations here and what we should be doing, I'd like to think we will follow that and be supportive of that, because not really being clear on what DESE may or may not give us I think, if anything, is sort of a green light for us to be really reflective on what we think it should be in Winchester and make it our own, and be all of us to be prepared to really support that and maybe even argue for it when in the subsequent school year we may be in a situation where we're reacting to something from DESE, and it may run counter to something that we believe. And it's hard to imagine, again, what will it be? Guidance, guideline, requirement, recommendation? I mean, we're all stuck until we know what label they put on it. So I would like to think to an extent, sort of like put that out of our minds and just say, okay, if we're in the captain's seat, how do we think that this should work? What are our priorities?
Yep. And I think that makes really good sense too. And I think this piece is just a little bit different than graduation requirements, because I see this piece as a little more of a district-wide thing, because these are the skills students have gained like as they've come all the way up through, just like the MCAS test was a competency determination that measured their skills through school. And so I agree, we should set it as to what we think it should be.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay.
So
I see that you have a proposed deadline or a proposed process here with some of the ensuing meetings. So, okay.
So that is the feedback we're looking for tonight. Does this process seem good? Is there consensus around this is how to go forward with it? Or is there something you'd like to see different than that? We're happy to adjust.
So with let me just see, internal working on a draft of recommendations coming to the policy subcommittee by late January, and then
Karen, can you pull it up on the screen so that people at home know what you're...
Dr. Hackett and Mr. Marin, could you pull that up on the screen? I do have it on my screen, but I'm afraid to show all my screens.
Jen, do you
and
have
find
that
the
up,
right
or
one.
I have it on mine. Are we talking about the document that I just had up?
Yes.
The process.
Yeah.
Not the
Otherwise,
FAQs.
I shall read it off again.
The process that Ms. Bolognese
okay.
was reading.
So the proposed process being that the administrative team will work internally to bring a recommendation to the policy subcommittee. And that would be by late January, with a first reading at school committee by early February, and a second reading and vote of the school committee by late February. And since that came from you, Dr. Aladema, I'm assuming that is a timeline, that time frame that works within the high school's
yeah, I mean, certainly it's quicker than we would like, but it's, you know, what DESE is urging is that we're quick with this, we're clear with this, we get it out to families and students, and that we have time. Again, we're so fortunate to be in a place where, you know, many districts right now are struggling with this for like hundreds of students, right? But we do want to be sure to be fair, you know, for all of our students so that they know what the expectations are, and it's a quick turnaround timeline. So,
well, we've been having lots of policy meetings, and we have lots of school committee meetings,
and you can't wait for more.
Woohoo! We'll just add that to the schedule.
As long as you are comfortable with that, Dr. Aladema, I am happy to support you in that.
Thank you.
Likewise,
yeah.
I'm supportive of it.
And as many meetings as we have, it's important. So I'm glad that we're able to
fit it in.
Work on this.
We can fit it into our
among
meetings.
the other multitude of things.
Thank you.
That's
we
right.
appreciate it.
Mr. Nixon, final comment, and then we'll move on.
One last comment on this, Madam Chair, and it slipped my mind until just now. As you're aware, so our SPED PAC actually met with the Disability Access Commission this morning, and the ballot question and MCAS was actually on their agenda. So it would be helpful, Dr. Aladema, if at some point in your process, I think there's community interest that was expressed by leadership from SpedPAC to kind of understand what we're thinking. I think that group has some questions about some students in our population that are probably reasonable questions. And perhaps it's only that, it's questions. I'm not sure how much of it is anxiety, but it would be good to check in with them. Yeah.
Will do. Yep.
Okay, moving into our next topic of business, the Finance Subcommittee will be talking about the FY26 athletic fees and the FY26 budget development update.
Mr. Mayor, are you okay to
The
pull up
Finance
the
Subcommittee has
presentation?
also been very diligently meeting. So,
Yes, I'll bring it up here.
Thank you.
along with our
Subcommittees do a lot
department.
of work.
Hold on. Okay, I should be sharing now. Yep. All right. Good evening, everyone. So, quick update from our meeting yesterday morning with the Finance Subcommittee. So we presented our preliminary maintenance of effort budget on FY26, and some quick highlights here. So what we're projecting now is a 5.84% increase over last year's budget. That in dollars is about 3.8 million. I have some highlights in some larger changes we made and sort of on the accounting side. So one change is in the central office, that org 111, you'll see. So we moved two things. First was that we typically carry those column moves for teachers at the central office level. But now we're to a point where we know who's sort of in line for those column moves next year. And so we've allocated those to the school because end of the day, they are paid out within their each individual salary line. And that's how it's ultimately reported when we report our expenses. And so it made more sense to carry it there. And we can still transfer around if things change, but it bounces up better. And then second, so that 954, about 500 of that is for those column moves. And then the remainder is for transportation for general ed that used to be carried in. So FY25, it's carried in the central office 111 org. And for FY26, we're proposing creating a new org called 125. So you see it on the bottom there. And so carrying that separately so we can track it and report it on its own as we do to the state as well. That's sort of in line with that. And some summary on assumptions within this budget. So this kind of factors in 7 retirements in those differences. So typically we carry those retirees around an M7 level. That's where these budgeted. On our special education side, the OSD provides guidance on their inflation. And so that rate of inflation increase is 3.67 for next year. And the number presented is based on our current sort of best estimates for those out of district placements. As always, we're continuing to monitor those as we go through this fiscal year and move ins, move outs, and added services. And 2 more notes. So all budget lines have been adjusted based on historical needs or trends we see, enrollment needs, and program driven needs. So all the lines from personnel to all those various other expenses we looked at and changed based on those points there. And the last bullet is that we're going into negotiations for all of our units, all 5 of them this year. And so this budget carries some assumptions as to where those will land next year and those step and column increases. Now I'll pause there if Dr. Hackett wants to add anything as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a step back. We've been doing this for a while. So when we say maintenance of effort, what we're talking about is a budget that will provide us the ability to run the program next year based on our projected enrollment. And generally right now, well, not generally, we are really currently using 4 projections, just a simple roll forward of where kids are now. So we bring the second graders into the third grade. We look at the sections, and then so the budget's based on that. There are no program improvements in here. There's no additional staffing in here. This is strictly if we were going to open school tomorrow for the next fiscal year, this is what we would need to do that given current levels of services. So for us, this is an important budget. We have previously at times we've brought forward what we call the rollover budget. We're not bringing that forward to you. I think that just created a lot of confusion. We do it internally to get to the maintenance of effort budget. So I just want to be clear that there's nothing new in here. We've made adjustments where we know we can make them. Contracts for like transportation, when we know those amounts, we've made those adjustments. And there's also estimates in here. So we feel very good about this maintenance of effort budget. Feel that it's a good number based on what we know right now. And as you know, there's a lot of time between now and May. So there's still things that can change. And not the least of which obviously is we'd have Mr. Marin said 5 units that are negotiating contracts. So that's all this is. The next step for the finance subcommittee and then for school committee will be to have some conversations around, okay, well, what do we want to be thinking about for program improvements potentially for next year, or any other adjustments that are kind of programmatically related, not necessarily based on straight kind of enrollment adjustments and contractual adjustments. I don't know if that helps frame it. Either one of us certainly happy to answer any questions, but Ms. Bergstrom, do we leave anything out or anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, the only thing I think I would add, Dr. Hackett, is we're also still in process with departments at the school level and reconciling what some of their needs are. We haven't yet had a report from our special ed director, which we expect sometime shortly. So there are still some inputs that we anticipate going into this budget. And really, we just wanted to tonight share with you where we were on the maintenance of effort so that you had a first look at this before we start having more conversations with the select board and the finance committee and the broader community at large.
Also, Dr. Hackett, yesterday, I think you had said, you and Mr. Marin had talked about how Mr. Marin and Ms. Kingdon had gone through, and the staff had gone through line item by line item, checking of the budget, and just the tremendous competence you felt in the numbers that were put together.
I did say that. There's just been a lot of work done the last year or two, especially with Ms. Kingdon, Michelle Kingdon, and Andrew. They first was position control, setting up so that we have a position number for every single position, so that some of the positions that are just kind of harder to track, particularly in and around special education with ESPs, paraprofessional support people, because it's based on IEPs and that shift, it can change multiple times within the given year. Teachers going out on leave, long-term leave, how we track that position. So all of that work, a lot of it was done last year, and really kind of refined even more for this year. The additional step that we took this year, and when I say we, really Andrew and Michelle, was to go through and look at all of our supply lines, our equipment lines, and to really kind of evaluate based on historical spend as well as enrollment shifts, what the starting number should look like for this particular budget, for the maintenance of effort budget. That can change and will change likely as we continue working with departments and talking to principals, but we just want to take the money that we had and at least put it where historical pattern of spending, and also make adjustments based on what we know already to be true for those lines.
when we look at our historical spending, I know it's been, you know, a pretty lean operation over the years. So we're putting aside program improvements. Uh, um, I guess I'd encourage you to dig in and make sure that you think that history aside, what we're doing is adequate to deliver without, you know, completely burning people out. You know, the level of service that for the current operation. So I'm sure you're doing that, or will do that.
We absolutely will be and have been doing that. What's important about this budget is it you know it really is a clean starting point. It's as accurate as we can be around the things that we currently know to be true and the assumptions that we know that we need to make. And now it's a matter of continued refinement, but also that next conversation about how, you know, we definitely have needs, and broadening that discussion out further. In fact, I mean, you know, I think we did talk about last time. We did a thought exchange survey with staff, and we got a lot of feedback from that. We've got some follow-up we need to do on that, to make sure we really do understand some of the requests or comments around staffing and what the needs are around staffing. And that's just going to be a process. It's going to, we likely won't be done with that process by January 30th. It's just too short of a window. So we're really trying to think through our timelines here, to make sure that, you know, we're in a place where we have a budget that we're bringing forward that really does represent our best effort to get what we need to have, given the resources that we know we have. But also, more importantly, I think to kind of map out the next 2 or 3 years. I think we need to really be thinking about this over a 2 or 3 year period. We've always kind of done that, but I think, you know, we're in a position now this year to be able to be, I think, much more detailed about that 2 or 3 year outlook. So those will be the upcoming conversations.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. So just thinking about maintenance of effort, as you, Dr. Hackett, and Ms. Bergstrom put it, I want to remind the committee that the location of central office right now, kind of sprinkled throughout the district, is not our it's not our baseline. That's a temporary condition to accommodate the students at Parkhurst, and they're there to accommodate the construction of Lynch. Custodial services are not in our budget, as we all know. They're on the town budget. My understanding, Dr. Hackett, is that DPW is not currently putting in a budget request for staff at Parkhurst next year. In the fall, Winchester High School will once again have enrollment above the design enrollment for the building. And so perhaps at our next meeting coming up very soon, we could have some conversation around administration's thoughts about location as early as next year. I want to put in a plug for moving central office back to Parkhurst. Maybe not for the long term, but maybe for the next 2 or 3 years, because I'm concerned that there's a consequence to students when we're taking space that's really meant for students.
Mr. Nixon,
at the high school. I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say I was just going to encourage you to stay focused on the budget.
Well, that's exactly what this is about, because we don't pay for custodians, so the DPW does. And our budget request, just like DPW's, goes to the town manager. So if there is an interest and expectation, either on the part of the school committee or administration, that we're consolidating central office back under one roof, I think those conversations should be had with DPW. I'd certainly be interested in that. That's not an expense we would actually see in our budget, but I do think of it as a quote unquote school expense, because we need to maintain our buildings. So I hope we can talk about that at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments from the committee?
I'm just grateful for the amount of work that's gone into putting this all together. So thanks to the team that's been assembled to assemble all this information. Maybe I can work the word assembled into that sentence a third time.
Oh, and Madam Chair, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. So the thought that was in my head, I want to just make the point: if we were to relocate central office, there would be an expense for that, a moving expense. which absolutely would fall on the district, but presumably could be an FY26 operating expense because we wouldn't be paying an invoice until after July 1st. So it would be a one-time expense, but I don't think of it as a capital project. So if that's something we're interested in doing, in other words, it's not just that the custodians need to be staffed and paid, but we'd have to find the money to actually move central office someplace. We'd have to kind of map that out and include that in the budget if we're going to do it.
Right. There's
All right.
other questions, I can move to the next. quick
Athletic
update.
fees.
Sure. So we also spoke yesterday on our food service management company contract, so FSMC. And so we are currently in the third year of our three-year contract with Whitson's, who was awarded our food service contract. So every 3 years, we've been doing an RFP for that service. It's a very controlled process through the state, even more so this coming year. So we have to do it for FY26 for July 1 start. And so what we proposed yesterday is changing that 3-year contract to a 5-year contract. And so as noted here, that's a process that this board, along with the select board, would have to approve. Any contract over 3 years would require both those boards voting for it. The contract itself would still be comprised of that initial 1-year award, and then have 4 renewable terms thereafter. Still have a 60-day termination that would cause. So it really operates the same. It just gives us a little more time, and with that more time, be able to not only just we can build a program out, with the same vendor, have a little more consistency. But also, if you remember back in the spring, we spoke about some of our capital plan needs, and one of those that was on the list is the upgrade to the McCall kitchen and the serving line there, and a lot of that equipment. Specifically, also the washing machines, and trying to introduce tray service there, like a reusable tray service instead of the compostable ones we use. So in doing that, we'll be able to take that capital cost and amortize it over the life of this contract. And 5 years is more favorable in doing that. So if it's around 300K, that would be over those 5 years there. And as noted, the process is in alignment with DESI, so we'd be looking to start this soon. We would have a representative from this board as part of the process. Ms. Bolognese was part of it almost 3 years ago, I think.
3 years.
Yep, fun process. So there'll be more information on that part soon. And the next slide, I just want to include a few updates of the current program there. As you know, we spoke about in the beginning of the school year about our move to compostable utensils and trays across the district. I want to include a picture of the new vending machines that are at the high school. So we took delivery just the other week. And so we're working to get those online this month with the payment system and integration with the My School Bucks platform. We also had the reopening of the McCall, I call it the additional serving line. So that was part of that expansion project. And sort of it was kind of paused during COVID. And so we were able to open it back up, and it's been well received there at McCall and helpful to the many students there that enjoy that space. Also with the Whitson's team, we were planning for the new Lynch, which is that full kitchen design and has that reusable tray service as part of that program. And the last two, we've seen a lot of success in our expanded breakfast pilot at Morocco. And so that was a program that was typically 2 students a day were getting breakfast sort of through the principal's office. And now we're seeing on average about 40 students a day who show up early before school. It's supervised. It's really neat to see they're there eating breakfast and they're playing card games, or it's in the gymnasium there. They're running around and having fun right before the bell rings there. And then also the team of Whitson's, together with schools, have created a lot of theme days this year. So we had in December, it was like football theme and taco themes. And then upcoming this month is this Winter Wonderland theme that they're putting on at the high school that they're looking forward to. So I'll pause there. I'll go back a slide too if there's any questions on it.
If you, I was going to ask. So, the finance subcommittee did discuss this quite at length with Dr. Hackett and Mr. Marin. Ms. Bolognese subbed in for Mr. Hopcroft this week on finance subcommittee, and the committee did come to consensus that we would like to recommend to the committee to accept the 5-year contract. We didn't see any downside to it on our behalf, since it is the 4 renewable 1-year terms, and that it still goes out through the regular RFP process. And we particularly appreciate the ability to update the McCall kitchen, as part of the renovation of an addition of that part of McCall. We'd hope to be able to do this, so it would be nice to be able to really see that through. So what we're looking from the committee is consensus that when Andrew goes out with the contract, that we go through the 5-year contract term instead of the 3-year contract. We do, I believe, Mr. Mayor, we do need also the approval of the select board for that. So we would need an actual vote on this, and then we could take this to the select board for their vote as well. Mr. Nixon?
Well, I had a question, and then I just heard what you said, and now I have two. So what role does the select board play in this? I have to ask.
It's because if it's greater than a 3-year term contract, so i.e. a 5-year contract, then it is not just our approval.
Yeah, so
it's in line with DESI, but it's part of MGL.
Yeah, so if we get into the details there, it requires a vote of both boards, anything over 3 years.
So I have two other questions. The contract actually runs from when to when? Is it like July 1 to the end of June? Does it correspond with the school
Correct.
year?
Yep.
Okay. And then for the renewable 1-year terms, do the terms do the subsequent years renew automatically absent a notification of termination? Is that how it works? And if so, when is the notification required?
No, so we actually we can't have automatic renewals. It's in our contracts, and so it's an amendment that we process each year, and they have to file a certain certificates of liability and debarment, and we file that with the state. So it is a process for this.
And when would we be renewing, Mr. Marin?
So we would renew typically around June. So for the renewal amendments around June, we have to give it to DESI, and it takes a couple of weeks for them to approve. Typically it's signed in July.
And then is there urgency, Mr. Marin or Ms. Bergstrom, in terms of looking for a consensus from the school committee on this tonight?
No, I think we could do it at your next meeting if that'd be okay. It is a process that we have to start soon with DESI and building our timeline to run through this process.
I'm only asking because if school committee members have not yet enjoyed having lunch at one of our schools, you might want to think about doing that. Let Dr. Hackett know, let Mr. Marin know, and let your appropriate building administrator know. I think it is a very appropriate thing for school committee to enjoy a meal at our schools, particularly when we're pondering changing how we structure our contracts.
And actually, Mr. Marin was
invited us for that.
What's that, Ms. Bergstrom?
Mr. Marin actually invited us to the Winter Wonderland on Thursday, January 23rd at the high school. And Mr. Nixon,
with a chef in-house.
We did also, Mr. Nixon, have a conversation about the elementary schools and the change that would happen when Lynch has its own kitchen, and the challenges of the satellite kitchens for the elementary schools, limiting the choices that we can do there, and the quality of food that we are able to present to our kids, since we talked about how, in particular, vegetables do not stand and travel well when they've been cooked. So I think your suggestion is a good one if people haven't had the opportunity to do so. I think that we are still a little bit limited on the choices and options we have, particularly at all our elementary schools, that again, having the 5-year contract might help us with a little bit, especially as we see Lynch open and we see what some of the possibilities might be around that as well.
Madam Chair, so I appreciate what Ms. Bergstrom just said very much. And my only other sort of observation would be there's choice based on the menu, but then there's also choice based on quantity. You can have an offering on the menu, but it's in such limited quantity that many students who look forward to that item find themselves with a poor substitute because we've simply run out. So it's not just about what's on the menu. It's about kind of meeting the interests and the needs of our students. And I also find it interesting what meal options are available at no cost to parents, because really nothing's free. It all has to be paid from somewhere. There are some very healthy choices that Whitson's offers, but they're not part of that sort of free option for students. And I think that that is also driving some decision-making on a part of our students. So anyway, any school committee member who's not yet had that opportunity, I think should do it, just for context. But thank you
Mr.
for.
Nixon, did I hear you volunteering to be on the food service contract committee?
I have done, it's been a long time since I've done it, and I'm probably due to do it. So if nobody wants to draw the short stick, I will.
I did it last time. It was fun. So
I will also just offer.
And now I
if
am
may,
hungry, having not
I
eaten
believe
dinner.
I believe the Winchester Public Schools were the first Massachusetts districts to partner with Whitson's back in like 2008, 2009, maybe, when they were making inroads into Massachusetts, and they were very aggressive and very creative, and they have since, picked up a lot more business in the state.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Mr. Hopcroft.
Thank you. So I am supportive of this proposal, and I'm very appreciative of the conversation and of sort of two themes I see here. One is moving towards more sustainable solutions. Having the dishwashers and the reusable trays and things, I think is an important signal and an important actual action that we're taking. And to continue doing that with the Lynch dishwasher and the McCall upgrades and so on and so forth. The other that goes hand in hand with that, as Mr. Nixon was just alluding to, is the availability and quality of high quality food. And as Ms. Bergstrom noted, when you're driving it around between different schools, you can't have that be as good. So I do encourage that we continue to look into whether the food is, how might we continue to improve the quality of the options and the availability of those options. But I think that this contract, it feels like supports both of those things, and so I think it's a so it has my support anyway.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I'd just
comments
mention
from
it's
our student.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Go ahead, Kayla. You got it. All you.
No, I was just going to reiterate, that if anyone would like to join us for this event, please let me know. And as I said that in yesterday's meeting, it would be the best $5 you've spent in a while coming to that. So it's a good meal.
If I'm available, I'd love to go.
I will note that that's 2
I like
weeks
to try
away.
food.
So I don't know what your window for getting a response from us. I'm generally comfortable saying go ahead. That's a little ways out.
Up to the morning of, it's fine. So.
It's like visiting the electric food vehicle. It's always there.
Yeah.
It's also not a cooking show. We're not looking to draw the winner based on your experience with the food choices. So the bigger question here is whether or not you're willing to entertain a 5-year, understanding that it helps us make some capital investments. I mean, there are other things that that challenge us in terms of some of the comments that Mr. Nixon made about availability, and not the least of which is just our school schedule. And it's a different experience to try to give a salad bar to kindergarten and first graders than it is to have a salad bar for high school kids. Getting kids through lines, in the day it's a relatively short day, and then there's kind of a sweet spot of how much time is enough time for them to eat, then how much time then becomes too much time, and then we get into some things that we don't want to get into. So there's a lot that goes into it, not just the contractor. We own on some of those pieces as well.
Dr. Hackett, do you need consensus from the committee to move forward?
I think what I heard is we're going to come back to you at the next meeting.
That's what I heard.
We'll plan to do that.
Yep, that's fine.
And did I hear Ms. Jens had something to say, Dr. Hackett?
Oh, I just opened
did.
it up. I opened it up in case she had anything to say about it.
How's the food?
Oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but no, I think student council was actually talking about this. We had a meeting with Whitson's just talking about like the food options and choices. This was about a couple weeks ago before break. So we we're talking about breakfast. Actually, a fellow committee member brought it up that we talked about breakfast options, just having the options that like the students want. So we polled the students and we sent out a survey to all the high school students. And it seemed, I can send the results, but they really like the muffins and they love all the options. There's so many various options, but I think they would have liked to see more. They said omelets and waffles, so kind of like a different variety. But we talked to Whitson's and they said that before COVID, they definitely had more of those options and kind of COVID took those away. And they said that they'd be happy to bring them back, but it's definitely a lot more work that goes into it behind the scenes that we don't really know about because it seems like swapping the options might take a little while, but we did bring it up to them and thank you so much. We already love the food, but yeah, there's definitely great food at the high school. I know I get lunch and breakfast every day, especially when I forget.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for letting me speak.
It's good to have input from people with their feet on the ground there.
The daily clientele.
Yes, that is right.
Mr. Member, do you want to move on to the athletic fees?
Yes.
I think it was the second read of that.
Yep. Let me bring that up here. Okay. Yes, we discussed previously at Finance Subcommittee. In this committee, we give an update on our recommendation to increase the athletic fees for next year. So currently you can see we're charging per sport, per student, $350 with an annual family cap of $1,400. So an increase in that by $50 would be $400 per student per sport, or $1,450 per family. And sorry, I meant to crop it here, but we're just focusing on the FY26 projection for those numbers, and this represents a $1.50 increase in those fees and what that would result in here. And so we're still projecting spending down some of our fund balance within the athletics revolving, but it is lessening it by increasing that fee, and maybe getting us into FY27 going through it.
So this is a second look at the proposed athletic fee increase.
And
I've not heard any questions about it.
Sorry,
Go
Ms.
ahead, Ms.
I just note that the maintenance of effort budget, I believe, does not include this fee increase. So when we're looking at the percent increase from the maintenance of effort budget, it does not presume the fee increase that Finance Subcommittee had recommended because we have not yet voted that fee increase. Mr. Nixon?
Yeah, so I think at the conclusion of our first look at this, when you last presented it to us, we had just a very brief discussion at the end there about how to think about the family cap and does that number kind of represent a threshold in terms of hardship? I know the per student per sport number is the same as we saw last time. Are both these numbers the same? Is the family cap the same as we saw it last?
Everything is the same. We are open to proposals or amendments to this in any way.
So I wasn't sure from the last I think you had said, Ms. Bergstrom, that you all had some conversation around that concept of hardship. And it wasn't clear to me if you might come back with a different proposal for the family cap. You didn't say that you would, but it just seemed like that was a conversation that was maybe ongoing. So I was just curious if you've had more thought about that.
So the family cap, it doesn't fundamentally really, if you multiply it out by the number of kids in sports, it doesn't fundamentally affect a change for families because it just takes the $50 and adds it in. It would have to, the cap would have to change significantly enough to cover another $400 sport. So
Okay.
this is just keeping it sort of, it could be 1400 still, and it still wouldn't effectively change anything. So this just takes the 50 we've added and puts it in the family cap, which I don't see as necessarily affecting families next year, Mr. Nixon, but it would start the base a little bit higher. So then if we do have to raise sports fees again in the next fiscal year, it sort of fundamentally lets people know that the family cap may raise as well. So that's just a discussion that we as a committee can have now of whether, we want to start to build that into the family cap, knowing that Mr. Marin is projecting that, we're probably going to have to raise fees gradually over the next few years anyway, versus bumping up that family cap all at once.
If I could add to just our process in general for all our fees, if families are experiencing that hardship or they fall into our free and reduced families, we work with them to either remove or reduce those fees. So we do that for transportation, we do that for athletics, anything else that we charge for. So it's more
So
of
on
a
per student
basis.
On a per student and per sport basis, we're looking at a little over 14%. And then the adjustment on the family cap, though, is much lower. That's only about 3.5%, which I mean is actually not at all unreasonable when you just think about the cost of escalation and inflation. I wasn't clear to me if you guys were still going to go back and noodle on that piece in particular. I don't have any objection to it. I think it's very reasonable, actually.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this as well. I just one sort of curiosity. Does the family total ever go up in a way other than in increments of the per student per sport amount? Like, does it go up 400, 800, 1200, 1600? Like, would it ever go up in any other increment?
It can go up in any increment that we choose it to go up in, Mr.
No,
Hopcroft. So it has,
I'm sorry.
I
No,
want to
no,
say it was 1200 a few years ago, Mr. Nixon.
different question. So I just don't want to get down that rabbit hole. My question is, assuming that the per student amount is set at a certain number, per student per sport, the amount of family pays will only go up in multiples of that number, right?
No, it's whatever the school committee votes.
Okay, that's not the point, but that's fine. I'm fine with this.
In other words, we could, I think, Ms. Bergstrom, right? We could say it's 1425. We could say it's 1395. Some years ago it was actually 960. So I don't know if your question is historically, does it only get adjusted in an equal increment?
Yeah,
no.
Comparable.
I could add
my question. My question
I
is
think
just
Mr.
whether
Marin was about to answer something.
Oh, Mr. Alker, I think I understand. So before that 350, it was nice because if you took 4 sports, that was your family cap. It kind of met that mark. So this does just that. So that'd be 1600, I guess, if you were
1600
to raise it similar. But with the way we process fees digitally now, we're able to manage that. But it was nice how it kind of nestled in that max 4 sports per family. So if that's what you meant.
I guess that was my point, was just that it doesn't really matter what you set the family cap at until you hit 1600 was the point, not what the history has been.
In terms of next steps, are we looking for a motion on this tonight, just to be clear?
We are.
Are we at a point that we could make that motion? Because I'm just looking at the time, and I know that we have a number of other items and an executive session on the back end, and it's already 8:30. So
go for it, Mr. Matthews.
I am happy to make a motion to accept the recommendation as presented on the screen for the FY 2026 athletic fees.
Second.
Can we just articulate what these fees are?
I mean,
I believe he said that they were the athletics fees.
No, he's saying $400 per student per sport with an annual family cap of $1450.
Thank you.
I'm happy to accept that amendment to the motion.
Second.
All in favor? All in favor, Mr. Nixon,
Aye.
Dr. Matthews,
Oh, sorry, I have some
Ms.
I have
Bergstrom.
some little
Aye.
potential voters, so I've been toggling on and off. I apologize.
And I heard Ms. Bergstrom say aye, and Mr. Hopcroft.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so the vote is unanimous. Thank you so much for all the
Thank
hard work.
you. Feels good to leave it with a decision made. So
That's right. We're taking step by step. Okay, so next up is from the policy subcommittee. And in your binders, you should have a memo about all the work that the policy subcommittee has been doing and all the policies that we've been looking for. And I will not, we have a list, and this is also listed in great detail on our agenda. So I will just tell you that we had gone through these policies, these buckets of policies at the December 11th and the January 6th, the December 11th, 2024, January 6th, 2025 meeting. And we have a bucket of policies with no change, and there are 35 of those policies. I will not read those all off because I believe those are amply noted in our agenda for the evening and in the memo. But I will note that, as we had said at our last meeting, our last regular meeting of December 21st, the policy subcommittee had reviewed all of these policies, and there were no changes to these policies. They were consistent with the MASC's online reference manual. So we will simply date these and note in the policy manual that these have been reviewed, and there is no action that's required by the school committee on these no change policies.
And just to, sorry
And-
to interrupt, but just to make
go
very
ahead.
clear, we
Yes.
will add, I think we both said this last time, but we will add a date indicating that those policies
yes.
have been reviewed, so that in the future, if someone comes to the point where they're actually looking at them, they know that in 2024 and 2025, they were reviewed and continued in their former state.
Yes, thank you. I think I meant to say that and it flitted out of my head. So thank you so much. So, and then with respect to the second bucket, these are the policies. Oh boy, now I have to find them in my manual, that have had MASC updates or deletions. The updates could be fairly minor, such as typographical errors or changes in legal or cross references, or perhaps the MASC had updated some of the language, or sometimes they recommended deletion. I did want to make note that there were some policies which are a little bit unique to, well, not unique to Winchester Public Schools, but we've made an addition that's a little bit over and beyond what the MASC has done. And I would say that specific policies that are unique to Winchester are, for example, numbers 23 through 25. These are some of the facilities policies relating to our turf fields and lighting in Charcha Field. We also have policy 29, and this also goes back to what Ms. Paradise was talking about with teaching about alcohol and tobacco and drugs today. We also have a slightly modified line, and this was all consistent with MASC, but there was a line that was modified, I believe, in 2016, that just said that the schools should be teaching about skills, should be teaching our students about skills for addressing peer pressure related to alcohol, drugs, and tobacco. And the other item that I thought was interesting for us to note was number 37, IHBEA, on English learner education. In our last meeting, Dr. Ellen Emma had talked about how the state has said that this is now being called multilingual learner education. So we have made that update, perhaps preempting that a little bit. But also in this policy, we do have a paragraph on the translation of district documents into other languages that we voted on and added in 2021, and which is specific to the Winchester Public Schools, that is not in MASC. So I think we had just wanted to make note of some of the areas where I think that we have gone a little bit beyond the MASC, and then otherwise, this memo just really captures minor updates. Dr. Matthews, did you have anything else to say on this particular portion?
No, I think a lot of these were smaller changes, but things where there were either errors or, a need to update. The other thing I think that you said sort of in passing is, updating gender-specific language like Board of Selectmen, as we've been doing across the town, trying to remove those and replace them with the gender-neutral language that we've now adopted.
And Dr. Matthews has very sharp eyes for catching these things.
That's
like
quite a
spirit.
compliment, Dr. Matthews, coming from Miss Bolognese.
I think we are a very good match for this particular task.
Yes.
Let's just put
we
it
like
that
to mind meld on this topic. It's quite fun.
Okay, I lost consciousness at one point during the meeting, just listening to the level of detail. Hit my head on the table.
Right. That's right.
We do have empathy for the superintendent having to attend these meetings with the two of us. So
yes, we do. We're very merry about this.
It is fascinating. There's a lot of energy, which the passion just gets me through it. So Mr. Nixon, I think, has a question.
Oh, yes.
I
was just going to, my last comment on this was just going to be, and that there are two policies, 46 and 47, that MASC had deleted. So in keeping with that, we recommend the deletion of those. Mr. Nixon.
I'm going to ask if our subcommittee could go back and take another look at policy BID. That has language in although it may have been cleaned up by MASC, there's a lot of language in there about cities and city councils. And given that there was a proposal that came to town meeting, I think at the last town meeting or town meeting before, on compensation for appointed members, it would be easy to kind of clean that up. So that authority rests only with town meeting. That's all.
I was just going to comment that MASC had indeed cleaned up that first paragraph that was very detailed about compensation or no compensation to school committee members. And we tried to reflect what was the recommendation of the MASC, which was much more streamlined than what we have had previously.
So my point just is that the policy BID that I'm seeing that was shared with the school committee still refers to cities and city councils. So that could probably just be stripped out and simplified even further. I think MASC's model policy is probably written that way because some members are towns and some are cities, but we could just tighten it up a little bit. That's all.
And probably the reason why you've not cleaned it up is because you don't get compensation. So it's probably the incentive to spend a lot of time on that hasn't been there.
However, Dr. Hackett,
just for the public.
I will just say, Dr. Hackett, I appreciate the work of our policy subcommittee, and I read everything they post on Google Drive.
I'm sure that you do. I was going to mention that the maintenance of effort budget includes a 50% increase in your stipends. So we've built that in. It was easy math when it's zero.
Does it come with a serving of air pudding with wind sauce?
I'd take a chocolate.
We'll find out.
Chocolate.
So I don't mean to delay us, but so Mr. Nixon, I've just looked up BID and I don't see that. I see that there's a significant section of deletion that I think covers a lot of what you were saying, but I don't see anything remaining that references city councils. That is what's been deleted.
So the document that I opened earlier this morning still had that. So maybe if you guys could maybe go, because I know you're working off two different sets of information, if you could maybe just double check that what's been shared with the school committee is what you want us to see. because I clicked on that link and I was just seeing some, I thought, superfluous language that I presumed would have been caught. So maybe that's just the issue. Maybe there is a tightened up version. I'm just not seeing it in what's been shared with me. That's all right. It should be easy to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, it looks based on, as long as we go out of what's in the folder in the binder tonight, then I think we should be clear because all that language has been stricken.
Would you like a motion, Dr. Matthews and Ms. Bolognese?
Oh, we have one more. The reason,
We have one more.
yes, there's one more. There's one more.
The last one has changes, so I didn't know if you wanted a motion on this group and then
maybe that's actually
separate one
wise.
on
I think
this.
maybe we
can do
move
that.
the ones that have small changes.
Yep. So I move to accept the policy changes as presented, except for which one has the changes. It's easier that way.
Are you asking about the one I mentioned?
No, they have one that has so I guess it's just policies 1 through 47 is listed. Does that work, Dr. Matthews?
I think that would do it. It's just that 46 and 47 are complete deletions of policies as opposed to changes, and I would just make that friendly amendment.
I accept.
And I hate to be a stick in the mud, Madam Chair, I just opened up the policy and in the document that's been shared, policies with revisions from MASC, and I'm seeing reference to the charter of the city and the city council. So I'm not sure I'm seeing what it is I'm asked to be voting on. So I'm not going to vote until I'm sure I'm looking at what I'm supposed to be looking at. This is policies with MASC updates or deletions. And there's reference to the city.
There's two documents in the folder. There's a school committee binder with today's date, and there's a copy of school committee binder with today's date. So I don't know if it's a discrepancy between those two, but the school committee binder has the more recent modification time of 6:30 tonight.
Interesting.
Dr. Matthews, could you I have
For
documents.
expediency, what number of the policy is that?
This is BID that I'm seeing.
That's just Dr. Matthews and Ms. Bolognese. I'm going to amend my motion to remove BID, and we can check it and bring it back at the next meeting.
Can I propose an alternate? Can I share my screen and we can look at the language?
That works for me too.
That way we can just dispense with it. Let me. We all have the ability to share screen, right? It's not.
You do. You do. I know because I'm in control of something around here.
Share screen, desktop 1. Here we go. Sorry. Can you see this?
Laptop is falling off.
Oh,
that is what I was seeing.
This is what I see.
So I have access to that document that's called policies with MASC updates or deletion. I cannot see any of the edits or strike throughs.
I can note. So if you're maybe not an editor, you would not see that. So we have to update your permissions of the document.
Oh.
That's a Google thing.
Oh, it's not just me.
Yeah.
So updating your permissions, Mr. Nixon, requires a full vote of the committee. Perhaps a public hearing.
But
Mr. Nixon, is it okay as you see it on the screen?
I'm trying to speed read. I mean, I did a lot of the stuff that I just wondered why it was there. It looks like is being struck. So
correct.
I feel better about this.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Am I the only, but outside the policy subcommittee, Dr. Hackett, am I the only one who didn't have the permission set, or do we have other members who didn't see this?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. You can tell me I'm special.
It would not be intentional.
Okay.
Okay. So I believe we still need to have a vote. So all in favor, Dr. Matthews.
I, with great enthusiasm.
I have that enthusiasm too. Ms. Bergstrom.
Aye.
And Mr. Hopcroft.
Aye.
And Mr. Nixon.
Aye.
Thank you very much. The vote is unanimous. So, okay. And we had one further policy, and I believe that was EFE. Pardon me. Yes, EFE. And so this is just a first reading of a policy, civil rights complaint for child nutrition programs. And this is a federal policy from the USDA. And there is some boilerplate language that was or a template that was recommended by the USDA, along with procedures that were provided by the USDA. So just in bringing our policy manual into line with federal recommendations or federal regulations, we are bringing this to you for a first read. And if you have any questions, you may ask them now, or you may reach out to Dr. Matthews or me or to Dr. Hackett before our next meeting. But we have many meetings, so.
I was going to say, and you're not looking for any action tonight. We're just
No
moving.
action tonight. This is just information.
First
Excellent.
reading.
Then I am good with that, and I'm happy to move on.
Thank you. Anybody else? I do not see anything, so we will move on quickly. And thank you. I'm super excited.
Before we Madam Chair, I don't mean to break hearts tonight, but I would like to request that we table the executive sessions for this evening.
I see some nods. Do we have consensus nods?
As long as we're all okay with that, I think that's fine with me.
Oh, man.
Nobody wants to stay until 10 o'clock?
Gonna be some heartbreaking.
I'm also so sorry. I think I might have to go. I'm so sorry to leave so early.
Go study.
Congratulations for lasting this long, Michaela.
Right.
That was amazing.
Don't apologize, Michaela. We're just all jealous that you are going.
Can I offer at some point, perhaps at her last meeting, if she goes the distance, Michaela could make the motion to adjourn the school committee.
Well, you know,
happen to be at the end of the meeting.
I think that motion could be on the table right now. I don't know what's stopping us.
Almost, Dr. Hackett. It's so close. Let her go.
Thanks so much, Michaela, for all your input. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michaela.
All right. Moving into anticipated future agenda items, which we were supposed to get to at 8:10. We will continue to look at the FY26 budget development. We will be receiving a Lynch project update, UMass enrollment study update, facilities master plan discussion, WHS updates on NEASC and the GPA working group presentation. We will have a second reading of the required biannual update of the bullying prevention and response plan 2025-26 school year calendar, special education overview, McCall Middle School schedule working group, Lincoln Chiller design, Morocco SOI overview.
I have a question.
Yes.
On the GPA presentation, is that coming on January 16th, Dr. Hackett? Do we know?
That is the date I have heard.
Okay.
Yep, we're scheduled for the 16th. And it's going to be, it'll be an initial presentation. Not asking for action.
So that you're reading my mind. So that'll just be an initial presentation. There'll be some opportunity for Q&A. And when that presentation is put together, not that I would expect you to say this at this very moment, can you just maybe be clear with the committee of what the timeliness, what are the requirements in terms of timing for when we should vote for any recommendation, depending upon what it may be, just so we in the community kind of understand what that hard stop is?
So I can tell you now, my hope and wait is that you would come back to it no later than your January 30th meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Will bullying and prevention be before the end of January? Also, WinPAC often likes to know when that presentation is. So if we make sure they get the date on that.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, and then our next meetings, we have a workshop tomorrow. January 16th, we will be meeting, and January 23rd will be our public hearing, and followed by a budget and regular meeting. we have tabled the executive session for this evening, and I would accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Nobody jumped on it.
Second. Oh,
Then I jumped on that. All
good
in
luck.
favor?
Good luck, Miss Allen.
Mr. Nixon,
Hi.
Miss Bergstrom,
Aye.
Mr. Hopcroft,
Aye.
and Dr. Matthews.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, and we are adjourned at 8:49 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye.